Good morning and welcome to a special live edition of Other Worlds Wednesday. Today, I wanted to take a few minutes and talk about the Rifts Ultimate Edition. Let's just say I'll get into a lot of the backstory as the stream goes on. But just wanted to anyways, I'm getting distracted. This is turning into a disaster. But anyways, if you are not aware, Rifts is a role-playing game in the veins of Dungeons and Dragons or Shadowrun or Starfinder, any of the other games that I've talked about on this channel. And it has a lot of history for me. And I recently found another YouTube channel, the Legion of Myth, and which actually that kind of reminds me. Going to give them a shout out in the description. Anyways, they did a year of Palladium fantasy and talked about just all of the different role-playing games. Actually, it wasn't even all of them. It was a lot of them that came from Palladium books. And so I started watching a lot of their other videos, doing some, deeper dives on some other videos that they had put out. Anyways, I really like their stuff, and it was a lot of fun. And so for me, Rifts goes back literally to the old days. It was originally released in 1990, and while it wasn't my first role-playing game, I found it because of my first role-playing game. Now, my first role-playing game was the Robotech role-playing game from Palladium books. And I didn't really know what a role-playing game was. I don't even think I had heard of Dungeons and Dragons at that point. But I loved the cartoon. Still enjoy it to this day. I'll watch it. It's been a few years since I've watched it, but I'll watch it again if I get so inclined. And anyway, so I didn't know what a role-playing game was, so I would buy the books and I would even make characters. The character creation actually was fairly straightforward, but it was later on, maybe about a year or two later, that Rifts came out, and I went to a friend's house out of state, and actually got introduced to Rifts because one of his friends had it. And so I'm digging through and looking at all of this stuff. I remember photocopying a few pages to take home with me because it's the Palladium system, so all of the games are technically compatible. And then within a year or two, I actually picked up my own copy of the original Rifts book. Now, the cover that you actually see here on the screen, that is for the Rifts Ultimate Edition. That was released in 2006, I believe. No, 2005. And it's a revision. It's got some updates. But the core system is actually still the same. It's kept the way you make characters, the basic combat system, everything, or the skill system. Skill system that's like most of the Palladium system, I think. But they the book itself it's more of an update, and I don't even want to call it a revision. The changes are technically pretty minor as well, at least in my opinion, what I was seeing. And I ended up with a copy a few years ago. I don't remember even exactly when, but it's just kind of sat on my shelf. I haven't, it's like, oh, it's Riffs. I know what Riffs is. No big deal. And then when I found the Legion of Myth videos, this was a little bit before Christmas, I decided that I was going to get out and I was going to start reading through it myself. And it was a lot of nostalgia, a lot of, a lot of good memories. Talked to an old friend of mine, and had a lot of good memories with him about it. So it was kind of interesting. Anyways, so what I would like to do is kind of show it off. I think it's an interesting system. I think it's a very interesting setting. And so just kind of want to show off some things that I like about it. I'll talk about some things that I know are some, we'll call them sticking points for some players. But we'll, hopefully have some fun. All right. So where is that? All right, let's switch to that view. And we will, there we go. All right, so we will show that. So as I go along, we still know what book I am talking about. All right. So what Rifts is it's a post-apocalyptic setting. Earth, due to some wars and basically a confluence of events. A bunch of things came together all at the right time and made it so that when this war happened, magical energy was released into the earth, and it was amplified because of the alignment of the planets and the day of the year, because it was like winter solstice or something, and basically just kind of put all of these things together such that the amount of magical energy available in the world just skyrocketed. And it ended up where the ley lines that already existed in the earth, conducting this magical energy, even though they were at a very, very low state, now flared up into existence. And where these lines of magical energy cross, you can end up with a rift. Now, basically, a rift is an opening either to another place, another time. Another place could be just somewhere else on Earth, or it could be in another galaxy or another planet. Could be anywhere. And so basically it's a kind of a how do I want to describe it? So as these portals are opening, then things start coming out, whether it's monsters or just aliens, or they call them DBs for dimensional beings, or demons, because of they are related to old Earth mythologies, or anything. Maybe they're alien intelligences like Cthulhu, or some others that we'll get into here in a minute. Basically all of these alien creatures start coming through the rifts and populating Earth, and basically attacking everyone. And so human civilization is destroyed. About 90% of humanity is eliminated, and basically humanity is just trying to survive. And so humanity goes through about 200 years of a dark age, and basically technology is limited, food, things like that, everything is limited. And then when I got into the game in 1990, it was set in 101 PA, or post-apocalypse, which is actually about 300 years past our time. Now, at this time, that's basically where it started. Now they have advanced the timeline a little bit, but only about 8 years. So currently they will talk about stuff in 109 post-apocalypse, but there are still older books out there. So some of them are going to be different based on when the time comes together. So that's the setting. That's what you come into with Rifts. So we've got obviously all the contents, and here's an example of monsters and the coalition soldiers, and let's see here. This is interesting. I can't zoom in. All right. So one thing that I actually think is kind of interesting, starting at about page 10, it's all background. Now, some of it is updated, some of it is changed from the original book. I do not have the original book to cross-reference it with, but yeah, so it's a anyways, let's see. Oh, and Brother Captain Mundo showed up. Welcome, sir. Nice to see you. So yes, this is a game. This is a role-playing game. That is complicated. So your DM played 3rd edition D&D blended with Rifts, thrown in some Gamma World, and converted from a D6 system to D20. Okay, so I'm not sure which of those is a D6 system, but wow, that is a lot going on there. So I will make an admission here. My actual play experience is very, very low. I've played a little bit of D&D 3rd edition, played some 4th edition, couple of 5th edition games, but I've never actually had a long running campaign. For the most part, I just read the books. I read the story. And that's one thing that I think that Kevin Simbita actually does really well, is he sets up this story. Like, so starting here on page 10, so we have Aaron Tarn here, and she's sort of the narrator that Kevin set up as for the story. So it's not always her telling the story about the places. A psyker spider monkey. Okay, that is. Yeah, I've heard some of the weird things that you can do with Gamma World. Mostly more recently, as opposed to in the past. But yeah, like I've heard, like you could do like a living tree or like living fungus, which not quite what you can do here, but not too far off either. Um, anyway, so we're starting here on page 10, and basically it goes for the next 40 pages, um, talking about the the riffs, the world of riffs. Like here, 6 pages in, you know, we started it. Actually, the first one I think was okay. It was from Aaron Tarn's first book, published in '63, Post Apocalypse, and then we go to '84, Post Apocalypse, 108, Post Apocalypse. Then we get to 109. So, I mean, they've been advancing the story. Some of this is different. So, this particular section, they start going through. And so they cover England, the New German Republic, Poland, Russia, China, India. India, I have heard, is the domain of warring gods and the forces of good and evil. And we mortals are pawns and soldiers in their battle. That's all they said. There's no book for that yet. All of the others I mentioned do have some. France, we did not visit France or the surrounding area, for we told it is a hostile and dark wilderness in the domain of necromancers, witches, and blood druids. Again, no book for France yet, which is funny because they've been publishing stuff for the last 30 years now. But like literally, so then we go Australia, Africa, Atlantis. Yes, Atlantis has come back with the rise of magic, in addition to other quote unquote lost continents. South America. Then they start breaking down North America. Now, North America is the base setting for riffs. So pretty much everything is going to deal with either the Midwest. There's a couple of books about the western portion of North America. There's Mexico, Canada. There's a ton of books that focus on North America. Even still putting out books for England and Germany and Russia, Japan. There is a book for Africa, which is very, very small considering the size of Africa, but that's for another day. Anyway, so they just go through and just kind of break down, hey, here's a taste of everything that's going on. And one thing that they point out, like a lot of people get overwhelmed. Where do I start with riffs? What do I even do? And basically it's like, okay, pick a place that you want to play, and chances are there's a book for it, and pick up from there. There are so many options for what you can do, what kind of game you can play. Do you want to do dungeon crawls? Well, you can find an old pre-riffs facility somewhere. Do you want to establish your own kingdom? Guess what? There's plenty of open territory that because of the destruction of the human population, there's so much just open land that, like, for us nowadays doesn't even exist. There's let's see, if you want to fight the bad guys, there are yeah, we'll talk about the coalition states here in a minute. Like they actually start breaking it down on page 24. The coalition states are, presented as a bad guy. And like 95%, yes, they are the bad guys, but they also represent, humanity fighting back and trying to take over its world. And so what kind of society are you going to actually end up with when it's no longer just a a scare tactic that everything outside of your city, your home, is actually trying to kill you? um, the rifts open up, and a monster is going to come through and just start pillaging because it can. uh so it the leadership of the coalition states is absolutely presented as a bad guy. But even still, they talk about how just the average human is still just trying to be a good person, be good to their neighbors. um so it very much gives it a different feel. um Anyway, so we have an overview of coalition state life, the different cities, the different towns. Um, Now, this was one thing I did also like, as we're just kind of scrolling through. They included some color plates in the book. Now, Palladium has a really, really unique feel, and I'm literally talking a feel. The pages are all, they're not newsprint, but they aren't super glossy thin pages, full color. It is black and white. It is it's an upgrade from newsprint, but it's just plain white paper. There's no colored background to make it softer on your eyes. There's no reading lines, things like that. um Anyway, so with Riffs, one of the crazy things on that is it was one of the first books that they included that actually had color pages in it. So like this, I absolutely remember, is one of the early pieces of art showing the ley lines crossing around Earth, from space. Now, space is a whole separate issue. But if you could go to space, this is what you would see. You would see these lines of energy crossing the Earth. This, let's see here. I want to put this on 2 pages. How do I do that? Nope, that wasn't it. I want to show this off because it's a really cool piece of art for there we go. 2-page view. There we go. So this is a scene of some adventurers coming across a ley line at night, and obviously they're in a forest, and you can just see this line of energy snaking off into the distance, and it's hundreds of feet wide. It's a couple miles tall, if I remember correctly. So and it's just this pure magical energy going across the land. Here's some additional art from across the years. More City of Laszlo, City of Tolkien. So it's very imaginative, very creative. Which this down lower left, you have the Storm Spire in the Federation of Magic. The Zytikic, basically a bug invasion of Earth, and they just want to take over everything. This is another one of those just original pieces of art that has been in the game forever. This is an actual rift opening to a Zytikic world, and them coming to invade Earth through the rift. So just kind of nuts. The East Coast, the characters. All right, so characters are, for the most part, you're going to play a human. As the books expanded, they included additional races. Sometimes you could take a race and play it in a particular class, but for the most part, you just assume that you are a human and that you are going to take on some kind of a character class as a human. So we start off, we've got men-at-arms. So combat cyborg, yes, you can turn yourself into a robot if you want. The crazies, the cyber knights, glitter boys, a partial cyborg, headhunter, the juicer, merc soldier, robot pilot. There are adventurers and scholars, sort of more of a support class, and so they've got the body fixer, doctor, the city rat, a cyber doc, operator, mechanic, basically, rogue scholar, rogue scientist, vagabond, wilderness scout. You've got magic users, the elemental fusionist. There's some controversy on that one because honestly, I have no idea why. I haven't looked into his rules specifically. I kind of read like the background on all of the characters. You'll see why in a minute. I did not read every single detail about every single character type. But then you've got the elemental fusionist, leyline walker, leyline rifter, mystic shifter, techno wizard. Techno wizards are kind of cool. Basically, they take magic and use it to make items. So like you can get a surfboard to ride the ley lines, out and about. Or you can make a pistol, that shoots bolts of energy. So, technically you're making a wand, but they, kind of techno sci-fi futuristic-y it. Now they've got psychics in here. Psychic powers, easiest way to think about it is like, so magic users are like a wizard from D&D. They can get lots of spells, but they have to learn them. They take time to cast. They're not super instantaneous. And then you have psychics, and basically they treat the psychics sort of like sorcerers. So it's quicker, instantaneous, but then you have a lot more limited selection on what you can do with your psychic powers. For the psychics, you have bursters, basically pyrokinetics, so they can create fire and burn everything down. The dog boys, basically mutant dogs that can detect psychics. Dogs are kind of interesting because they can actually detect the supernatural and actually do damage to supernatural creatures. Psy stalkers, basically psychic vampires, and mind melter, which is just we'll call it a normal psychic. They do have one racial character class, which is dragons. So if you would like, you can play a dragon in the game. Then there's also the coalition soldiers. So if you actually want to run a game as a member of the coalition, you can. Or maybe you started as somebody in the coalition, but you left because you got tired of how things worked in the coalition. Again, there's different options. And so they've got grunts, they've got robot pilots, military specialist, and a technical officer. Hey, welcome, Loa. All right. Rifts is a unique setting that needs some kind of media piece to bring it to popular culture. I don't disagree. It's been around for 30 years, and they did a video game but for some reason, they put it out on the N Gauge, which was a new phone put out by Nokia in the early 2000s that did not work very well. I was working at a GameStop. I think it was GameStop at the time. And my manager got one because he went to the manager's meeting for GameStop. And I think he used it for like a week. And that was a disaster. So, but that was the only place you could play the Rifts video game. I don't know anything more about it. I tried to find some. I tried to see if there was any kind of an emulator. Nothing. Supposedly they've been optioned for a movie for years. But the problem, I think, with that, not that I wouldn't like to see a Rift movie, is there are so many options. There's so many things that you can do within Rifts. And while there are some notable bad guys, there's not a lot of notable good guys. So, like, if you wanted to do a Dungeons and Dragons movie, technically you could go in, you could take Dritz, you could take the twins from Dragonlance. There are all sorts of characters because they have had the fiction to go along with it. But those don't really exist in Rifts. And they've done a few novels. I have never read them. I have a feeling I might take a plunge on those here soon. I don't know. But regardless, there's a lot of things you can do. And so how do you make it feel like Rifts? What is an identifiable Rifts story that would help pull it into the public consciousness? I don't disagree. I would like to, and I'll get into more of that when I actually get to the rules section. But for now, I mean, it's just, I do think it needs a touch more love, we will say. They're still printing it after 30 years for a reason. People are obviously still buying it. The company's not out of business. So I don't know. Okay. Now with Ultimate Edition, this is one thing that is a little frustrating. I will kind of point this out. So there is a note. See police, commandos, sailors, and other coalition OCCs in Rifts World Book 11, Coalition War Campaign, and Sourcebook 4, Coalition Navy. So when Rifts originally came out, Simbita didn't know how it was going to do. So there was just one book, and it had some bad guys, and it had some monsters, and it was everything all contained one book. And since then, they've added world books to detail different portions of the world or the galaxy or whatever. And over time, which is cool to get that additional information, but doing the Ultimate Edition, you now see these references, to other books. And so it almost feels incomplete, even though it's a bigger book, more content, lots more magic is listed. So it's a little frustrating as far as that's concerned, but there are so many options that I don't think that's necessarily a problem. Just one thing that I did notice, I've heard of a couple of other people mention it, so I figured I would bring it up. Just because, it can be kind of frustrating. You get a new book and it says, oh yeah, by the way, go get this other one. And, you were hoping that you could just get started. All right. So we've got a nice little picture of a Borg. All right. So character classes. Character classes in, let's see, real quick. Movie. 3 coalition soldiers are what is left of a unit that was hunting mercs. 3 mercs left of the unit that was hunted. And now they need to fight together to defeat a greater enemy, probably vampire. I could see that. That could be interesting. I kind of wonder sometimes if it might be a little easier to do like an animated series. I don't know. I could be wrong. I would think that an animated series you wouldn't have to pay for special effects. But yeah, that could be a nice little story on its own, especially when you get players that, you know, some want to be humans, or we'll call them free humans, some want to be coalition humans, because let's be honest, coalition soldiers do look kind of cool, not gonna lie. And so yeah, that could be a nice solid story. And that's the thing, there are tons of stories that you can tell in Rifts. I'm not trying to say that there aren't any good stories. I'm just trying to think of what is a plot line or a story that is definitively Rifts. You know, that it's like, okay, this is going, you want an elevator pitch storyline, what is it for Rifts? So that's where I think it could get a little difficult, but I don't know. Let's see. All right, so first off, point out, yeah, the cyborg starts on page 45, and you don't finish going over everything you need to know about Borgs until page 53. So basically we get 8 pages. There is some art in here, but basically 8 pages of here's what you need to know about playing a Borg. There's a page of background. What is a Borg? Why would somebody be a Borg? Why are you willing to, you know, pull your brain out of your body and, you know, put it into a walking robot? You know, all of that, which, you know, seems like it's a lot, but I remember looking at Dungeons and Dragons a long time ago. And by long time ago, I mean like the 90s, because technically I didn't even play until the early 2000s. But I picked up the player's handbook. So it's like, okay, so this is what a player needs. This is just getting started. And the first thing it says is, all right, let's make a character. Okay, why? What am I making the character for? And I think part of that influence was because of my early days looking at things like Rifts and Robotech. You know, I get a page here about, here's a Borg, here's how a Borg is made, this is why somebody would become a Borg. And then I look at something like Dungeons and Dragons, like, hey, a fighter hits stuff a lot. Okay. The player's handbook has nothing about any kind of a setting. Yes, you're supposed to go and buy your Forgotten Realms campaign book or your, you know, Eberron campaign book. Don't get me wrong, I like Eberron. I guess I'm that guy. But they, you know, there's no information, there's no motivation. Yeah, this is the first character class that we get to. You know, and prior to that, we had like the first 40 pages, you know, outside of the table of contents, was just telling you about the world and what's happening. They give you a reason. It's like, oh, this is why I'm going into the game. Oh, am I going to be a coalition state soldier? Am I going to be a magic user in the city of Tolkien? You know, there are, you know, they're giving you reasons for playing the game, and I like that. Anyways, so then they go into you know, your statistics, and basically just starts walking down. Okay, if you're going to play a cyborg, this is what you need to know. These are basically the stats that you're going to have for your character. This is going to be, you know, weapon options that you have. And the funny thing is, this is telling you all about the character class, and the game hasn't even told you how to make a character yet. So when I was reading through, I skipped a lot of this, the specific rules, like, okay, magic and PPE for a cyborg. Okay, I'm not worried about that until I'm actually making a character. But this, I did want to focus on, in fact, actually, let me zoom in here. All right. So Palladium is basically a stats and skill based game. You're going to have both of them. They're both going to be important. So when you have a character, you're going to first start off with OCC skills. Now, OCC stands for Occupational Character Class. It's what is your job? And you're going to get a list of these are the skills that are important to your character. So we've got language native. You get it at 96%. It's a percentile based skill system. Some people like it, some people don't. Personally, I don't think it matters. Basic electronics or basic mechanics, pick one. General repair and maintenance, land navigation, pilot, tanks, and APCs. Pilot, one of choice, excluding robot and power armor. Radio basic, read sensory equipment, weapon systems, climbing, weapon proficiency, ancient weapons, one of choice. Weapon proficiency, energy rifle, weapon proficiency, modern weapons, two of choice. Hand-to-hand expert. This can be upgraded to martial arts or assassin at the cost of 2 OCC related skills, but only when character is being created. So they list out, hey, these are all the things that are important to being this type of a character. You then go down to your OCC related skills. So select 5 other skills at level 1, plus 1 additional at levels 3, 7, 10, and 13. So, this lets you start, kind of customizing it. Now, these are all going to be typically related to whatever your class is. And then it gets down to secondary skills. 4 secondary skills at level 1 from the secondary skill list in the skill selection or skill section. So this is if you want to say, it's my Borg is, a veteran of the Tolkien War, but he's, sort of regretting, doing the full conversion. And so to help, compensate, he paints in the off time to, calm his regrets, things like that. So I'm just kind of making stuff up. But again, you get a lot of, options and variety for your characters. So even though you have the fixed OCC skills, you then still get to customize your character. Not every Borg is going to be the same Borg. They're not all going to have the same stats, the same skill set. And then when you start getting into adding additional bionics, they can get even more customized. So then it's like, okay, here's the cost. These are the things that you can add in to make the Borg that you want. So like if you want this guy right here, what are the things that you would build into him, add to him to make it work? Anyways, and then just more and more and more and more. Crazies. Crazies are a class basically before the apocalypse. Mankind was trying to improve humanity, and so they started they tried what they called mind over matter technology, basically implants in the brain to make somebody run faster or hit harder, things like that. And but there's a side effect in that it drives you insane. So there's that. So then you end up, getting, the insanity like this one. So at first level, everything is fine. At second level, roll on the phobia table. Third level, roll on the affective disorder table. Fourth level, roll on the random crazy insanities table. Sixth level, the obsession table. Eighth, the phobia table. 10th, the neurosis table. 12th, the psychosis table. And 14th, a random insanity. So, the longer you use it, crazier you're going to get. They are apparently drag racing behind me. Split personalities, cyber basically part cybernetic, psychic lightsaber wielder, for lack of a better way to put it. Basically Jedi. Jedi with cybernetics. We'll call it that. Then the Glitter Boy. Now, the Glitter Boy is this guy right here. Kind of iconic to the game. I remember when I first saw Rifts, this was kind of the big attraction to me. Let's see. I have Rifts books memorized, but I really hope this video gets someone new into Rifts. I hope so as well. The Rifts community needs to grow. It absolutely does. I have a big regret because I had so many books and I got rid of them and I regret it to this day. Got rid of them probably about the time that Ultimate Edition came out. And as I said earlier, I watched pretty much all of the Legion of Myth videos for their Year of Palladium books. And needless to say, that really rekindled my spark wanting to go in and look at it. I want to do some more with my Rifts books. This is just one where I finished reading the Ultimate Edition, so I just wanted to talk about it. So thank you for showing up and putting in some comments. Anyways, back to the Glitter Boy. This is him right here. Basically, he's like 8 to 10 feet tall. I forget what exactly. But then it's like super high polished chrome. Like in fact, you take half damage from lasers, and then he has a hypersonic rail gun on his shoulder, called the Boom Gun. It's one of those things where, like, especially as a teenager, not gonna lie, but to see this guy and you've got this giant power armor, this gun that can supposedly blow up everything, and it's just cool. Now, I'll admit, like, these kind of, horn / exhaust on the head, I've never understood it, but it wouldn't look right without it. So we'll just leave it at that. I've seen some other designs that they put out in later books. Not bad, but again, this is just iconic. So this is kind of a front and rear view of it. This, I want to zoom in on this one. So they basically, like, I absolutely love this because of the, like, number one, because of kind of the comic book look to it, but then just kind of this whole description of, the main gun. So you've got the gun, the retractable grip, the ammo drum, the casing injector, the laser targeter, the ammunition, and the sight array. The recoil suppression. So if you'll notice on the back of the Glitter Boy, there were basically these 3 rocket engines, And so when he shoots, the rocket engines fire so that, he doesn't get knocked on his butt. On top of that, the telescoping anti-sway pylon. So basically, if you want to, with laser drill, by the way, if you want to fire this thing, you basically have to drop these pylons almost 5 feet into the ground. Hooks come out from the toes to grip even tighter. And then you also have this rocket-assisted booster on your back to make sure that you don't fall over. So I thought that was fantastic. And then a little bit more about the pilot, his suit, helmet, what it looks like inside the helmet. Again, I still don't understand these exhaust tubes, but whatever. It's a glitter boy. It's what it is. Anyway, so yeah, the glitter boy pilot is a straight up class in and of itself. It's not, it's not just a robot pilot. And part of it is because they're presented as sort of a wandering knight. They've added some additional background to it, but for the most part, it was really presented as you were, either like the son of a pilot, or you had found a suit of armor. They actually reveal why you would find a suit of armor in future books. But the glitter boy was so unique, and the pilots were looked at in such a different, like I said, sort of like this wandering knight kind of feel to them, that they just made their own class. So again, you have your own OCC skills, related skills, secondary skills, stats for the actual robot, cyborg or partial conversion, cyborg. Let's see, the Juicer. Okay, Juicer is also another one of those iconic characters from Rifts. Going back to the Crazies with their mental implants, the Juicer basically were they were trying to enhance humans by pumping them full of drugs. So this one's kind of interesting because not only is it a we'll call it a super powered character, they're stronger, they're faster, but they're also on a clock. Basically, when you create the character, you're told, all right, you're going to die between 5 and 7 years because you're plugged in to this drug system controlled by a computer. So if it needs you to calm down, it will pump drugs into you. If you start moving faster or doing more activity, the computer's going to sense it and it's going to amp up your adrenaline. So you're going to do it stronger and faster. But this constant infusion of drugs is going to kill you somewhere between year 5 and year 7. I don't know. But they do give you an option, like after a year or two, you can detox and go off the drugs. But that doesn't always end well. The longer you're a juicer, the more likely you are to not survive the detox process. So, why did you become a juicer? Why did you decide, okay, I'm going to fill myself full of drugs? And what are you going, what's your mission? Why are you trying to do it? Are you trying to, avenge your family? Were you looking for a way to protect your little sister? Whatever it is. And, so it's what's going to be done to survive that, or not survive, but make sure that you've accomplished whatever your goal is before your character dies. I think Where is it? The juicer will die after 5 years and 46 months after being a chemically induced Superman. There are no exceptions, no saving throws, no hope. The body is destroyed, used up. Not even psychic healing or magic restoration or resurrection can help. So, no more than 7 years. You've got 5, might be able to push it out a little longer, but you're going to die from the drugs. And I think it adds a very interesting look, or not look, but an interesting play style to the character, just because of the fact that, like any other role-playing game, essentially your characters are told, they're going to live, forever. They're going to become the king. They're going to do whatever it is. They're going to be the hero. This guy's like, man, I'm time to check out. I'm out. Sorry. So I think that's really interesting. Let's see. Then we got some mercs, robot pilots. So this is sort of like the glitter boy, but a little bit different, less advanced, less cool, we'll say. You do actually have 2 options. You can be the robot pilot or the power armor pilot. So they're slightly different, but they're technically under the same OCC. You want to be a doctor, city rat. So just, a kid on the streets. Cyberdoc, do you actually want to make the cyborgs? Operator, so fix all of the bots on your team. The rogue scholar, so Erin Tarn, who I mentioned earlier, she is a rogue scholar. So basically they go and they try to find the ancient histories, the information that was lost or that's being kept from humanity by the coalition states. One thing I did forget to mention is that like 90% of humans are all illiterate. They can't read. In the coalition states, they're actually kept that way on purpose. So through propaganda. I did mention that the leadership was evil, even if the people themselves aren't. So there's that. Rogue scientists, vagabonds, wilderness scout. This is kind of your ranger class. They can find their way in the wilderness. Track animals, things like that. We've got practitioners of magic. So this elemental fusionist, again, I don't know much about it because it came out after my time. There is some controversy because it did come from the video game. That's all I know about it. Actually, I know a little bit more. Basically, you're either a fire, water, or earth, air elemental fusionist. So you're trying to use magic that kind of combines those pairs of elements. All right, we've got some more color plates. This, again, is another one of those iconic pieces of art. This is a Leyline Walker. Leyline Walker is your typical magic user, or I should say wizard type character. They're just called Leyline Walkers because, ley lines are free and cheap sources of magical energy. It's all like the magic system is also a little bit it's very different from Dungeons and Dragons. Dungeons and Dragons, you have like level based quantities. So like a wizard can cast 4 first level spells, just making it up. Whereas in Rifts, you can get access to any of the spells, but there's a cost called PPE, potential psychic energy, which is kind of funny that they call it psychic energy, even though it's for magic, not psychics. But then, each spell has a cost. So, you're going to have a power bank pool, and then you can spend that however you want on the particular spells that you want to cast. And so technically there's no limitations that way. That's why, like a ley line walker, they like to be near the ley lines to have access to that energy, because then they can use that instead of having to draw on their own internal magic. All right, so here's some different ley line walkers. Leyline Rifter. So these guys are kind of interesting because they like opening rifts to other places, which for the game, let's be honest, I mean, part of the fun is, okay, let's go through a portal. Let's go somewhere else. But just from a world standpoint, we don't want anyone opening more portals. The Earth is already overrun with aliens. Do we need more of them? Anyways, sorry, I'm just being silly here. The Mystic OCC uses both magic and psionics. The Shifter is sort of like a Rifter, but more in along the lines of trying to summon creatures through them. So again, fantastic art through all of this. The Techno Wizard, Techno Wizards weren't really changed in this edition from the original, but they actually brought in additional rules. Yes, shifters are seen as crazy at best and evil at worst. Yeah, exactly. They actually mentioned that in the book. So they do add in the Techno Wizardry construction rules. So like I said earlier on, the Techno Wizard, you want to make a ley line surfboard and just ride the ley lines wherever you want to go. You can do that. You want to make a magic shooting pistol, you can do that. And so basically they gave rules for how to do that. I don't remember what the rules were originally. I think it was more just like they would list out equipment and then you could buy that and use it. But they eventually made rules for being able to make your own stuff. So obviously that gets, pretty in-depth. Psychic characters, bursters, like I said, pyrokineticist. So basically he's going to generate fire with his mind and burn you. Dog Boy. Now, these are the first of the Coalition characters, because the Coalition created the Dog Boys to basically protect the city from magic users or psychics that were trying to hide, because the Coalition hates magic, hates monsters, hates aliens. In the simple sense. So if you want to play a dog boy, because basically it's an uplifted dog, they're still a dog, they're still treated like a dog by the Coalition, but they can talk, they can think, they can operate independently, report back, but they're a dog. So there's that. So again, we've got our OCC with the skills and all the information that you need for it. Mind Melter, like I said, that's just kind of your generic psychic. Psy Stalker is so they're like I said, they're sort of like psychic vampires, but they don't really use as much like psychic powers on their own. It's more that they're trying to feed off the psychic energy of everyone else. So they actually mention that they have to feed off of, a human, a DB, or an animal. They can't feed off of ley lines, it makes them nauseous and it tastes like sour milk. So that was, you know, because you're like, oh, just walk up to a ley line, take a drink, and you're good. Nope, doesn't work that way. Wild size stalker dragons. So this I remember being, you know, really impressed by when I was a kid. It's like, oh, dragon, and it's a character, and you can play this. Now they do throw in a whole bunch of limits, but there are also like super massive powers when your dragon levels up and becomes a more adult dragon, because you start as a hatchling, but you're a baby dragon walking around. And you know, now dragons can shapeshift so they can look human, but as a baby dragon, it only lasts for a few hours, whereas a bigger dragon may be able to do it for days. So, so it's, you know, there are penalties to playing a dragon, even though you absolutely get the massive power of a dragon. This is also kind of cool. They give you a bunch of different. So Cat's Eye Dragon looks sort of like an Asian style. Flame Wind Dragon, very much a Western style. Frill Dragon, Snow Lizard Hatchling, Whiptail Dragon. So they give you a lot of different options. Psionics. So if you're going to play a psychic character, you're going to have what's called inner strength points. And basically that can run any of these psychic powers that are listed here. Obviously it's it's going to be a much smaller list than your magic powers. But like I said, think of it sort of like a sorcerer, faster, easier to use, and running off of a different power source. Let's skip through all of this. Oh, then we have magic. So, like I said, magic is going to be like your wizards, slower, but a much larger access to the things that you can do with magic. You can tap into ley lines, things like that. Let's see. So yeah, so then here, another way to describe it. So magic, we've got all of these spells listed here. There's different spells available as your level goes up, all the way through level 15. But there's been so much magic added to the game that they literally put out another 300 something page book that's just magic collected from the different world books. So it's, there's a lot to do with magic. All right. So after all of that, so again, we're now 200 pages in. Notice we've just talked about what types of characters, what kinds of things they can do, a description of magic, a description of psionics, still technically not even dealing with any of the rules. But we then get into the coalition states. So who are the bad guys? Now, the coalition states is technically relatively new. They evolved from some of the survivors of the apocalypse. Vagabond OCC rules. I have never played a Vagabond, so I will take your word for it. But that's awesome. But the actual, as far as like the coalition states and Emperor Prosek, all of that is relatively new. And so just this goes into a lot of background about the coalition states and the coalition type characters. So game designers notes, coalition characters can be played as good guys or bad guys. For most gamers and game masters, the coalition states, Emperor Prosek, and the soldiers of the coalition states army have become the villains people love to hate. Goose-stepping monsters in human skin who persecute DBs and people who choose to believe and live differently than the coalition states. The worst of the lot are the soldiers who use their power and military might to be bullies for their own personal gain. The power structure of the CS and its military has made the army ripe for evil and ruthless men to rise to power and do things that even the Emperor and High Command would not suggest. However, if it is leveled against DBs, even the worst atrocities are ignored, overlooked, or condoned, earning the perpetrator a slap on the wrist, if any reprimand at all. This attitude only breeds more injustice and atrocity. If anything, Emperor Prosek has created an atmosphere where cruelty and evil can thrive. It makes dealing with coalition troops a scary proposition because one never knows what he'll get. And this is where an important distinction must be made. Not all coalition soldiers are evil, corrupt, or murderous fiends. Many are misguided patriots who believe the CS propaganda and see DBs and the aliens as otherworldly invaders bent on conquering the Earth for themselves. For them, it's a simple matter of kill or be killed, fight or lose everything they hold dear. This isn't evil, it's self-preservation and heroic. To go into an uncertain world filled with magic and truly evil and malevolent monsters to fight for what you hold dear is courageous and commendable. These soldiers hope to make the world a better place, at least for humans. They also try to maintain some level of law, order, and military protocol. They don't engage in criminal or corrupt activity. They don't take bribes and don't have crooked schemes in place on the side. They try to be good soldiers and live good lives. That means while they may reluctantly follow orders they don't personally agree with, they won't gun down innocent DB women and children or slaughter entire villages. They show some level of compassion and wonder if their leaders have not gone too far sometimes. Some might also question other elements of their society and come to see DBs, rogue scholars, body fixers, and others who would speak against the coalition states as being people too, not just faceless enemies. So I think that is absolutely important to the game. It's easy to write off a bad guy, but take something like Star Wars. We all know the Emperor is evil, but there's a reason he did what he did. There were problems in society. There were cracks in this old republic that wasn't addressing the actual needs of the people. Now, the Emperor was a human supremacist and did all sorts of other problems. But you can't just say, oh, he did it all because he was evil. And I think that's one of the strong points of Rifts is they've made these fantastic bad guys. I mean, as you go through, look at these guys. They don't look very nice. Actually, the one on the right, he looks a little nicer. It's kind of cool, kind of spacey. But when I first got into the game, the left design, that's what we knew. The Coalition War Campaign didn't come out until I had graduated high school. And so forever, this is what the coalition states looked. It was black armor. It was this death's head helmet. They looked like bad guys. I think this new style actually softens them up a little bit. All right. We're going to have to end this here in just a few minutes. We've got the Samus armor pilot. They've obviously increased this, made some more options, more things that you can do. They've got descriptions of the Coalition War Machine. Oh, here's another classic piece of art. The old Samus armor. Yeah, and that was that. You're right. The excuse was to bring order. The truth is he was evil. Yes, you're absolutely right. I just pointed out that anytime I use that as a quick and dirty example, but there's anytime we have a bad guy that comes in and takes over, there was clearly something else happening in society. Even with the short guy with the weird mustache, his country was being beaten down. It was prevented from being able to do anything, to grow, to progress. They were massively in debt. And he proposed a way out. So, yes, he was a bad guy, but it wasn't just because he was a bad guy. So, anyway, so we got some fun art, some nice looks at, just how Rifts has been depicted over the years. Here's some classic rulebook covers. Sure. No, you are absolutely right. But that's why I wanted to read that part where Sambita actually says, hey, yes, the people at the top are bad guys, but just because he's a coalition soldier doesn't mean that he's a bad guy as well. There are many shades of gray. There are many layers of nuance that, especially for a role-playing game, can make for just some really good, really interesting stories. And I think that's one of the absolute strengths. Yeah, I'm not going to say that, Karl Prosek or Joseph II are to be admired. But I'm not going to just say, oh, that coalition grunt, oh, he's just as bad as they are. It's Rifts. There's nuance. Very, very nuanced. But yes, life is complex, even if it is make-believe. All right. Oh, this is the original cover of Rifts. This is what caught me, at 14 or 15 years old. The Blind Warrior Women, the Splugorth, we'll call him a people catcher for YouTube. But yeah, this was iconic. This is what grabbed me on. All right. Got more coalition equipment. Skelelobots. More equipment. That's another thing with Rifts. If it's not character classes, it's equipment. Game rules. Okay, so they go into a lot of role-playing, Rifts terms, things like that. They then go into character creation. There's 8 attributes, 3 mental, 5 physical. IQ, basically how smart you are. Mental endurance, how mentally tough you are. Mental affinity is your likability, personal charm, and charisma. Physical strength, how strong you are. I am having to get off, so I'm going to go a little bit quick through this. Physical prowess, basically your dexterity. Physical endurance, how resilient you are, how much toughness you can you have, like if you're getting hit, things like that. Physical beauty, speed. Physical beauty, how physically attractive you are. Speed is how fast you are. Now this edition is different. They do add rules for below average stats. Basically anything below 10 is considered below average. And then they go in through penalties for each of those stats being low. I'm not entirely sure I want to use those, but we'll see. All right. Then we have damage ratings. Now, Rifts has 3 types of damage capacity. There's hit points, there's SDC or structural damage capacity, and MDC, mega damage capacity. Now, hit points, you want to think about that as sort of like your actual life source. The like you lose your hit points and you're dead. Whereas SDC is think about it sort of like a boxer. Okay. A boxer is going he's going to be able to take a lot of damage from being punched, but it's not breaking the skin. It's not necessarily breaking bones or causing, lacerations internally, things like that. So, SDC, like I said, is more of a resilience. Hit points also only apply to living characters, whereas SDC applies. SDC and MDC are like, the door. Well, the door is going to have SDC. It's not going to have hit points. MDC is a little controversial at times, and I'm sort of mixed on it. Well, not sort of mixed on it. I understand what they're doing. Hey, Scratchmaster. Welcome. Just going to be here for a few more minutes. But MDC is basically 100 SDC. But not entirely. So like if you have an SDC pistol and you shoot something with MDC, the SDC pistol isn't going to do anything. Whereas if you have an MDC pistol and you shoot at an SDC building, well, the MDC pistol is going to basically blow it up. Happy New Year, sir. Welcome. Now, it's controversial just because it adds to this power level. There's no reason to take SDC armor. There's no reason to take an SDC weapon, especially in Rifts where everything is MDC. And while I agree with it to a point, it then also, or I heard some stuff recently that make a little bit more sense. Like I could take a 22 rifle or a baseball bat and I can start wailing away on a tank and nothing is ever going to happen. Okay. Like I might scratch the paint if I'm lucky, but for all intents and purposes, I'm just wailing away and wasting time. But that's because it has MDC level armor. Whereas like a tank, it's going to shoot me with its gun and I'm just going to be goo everywhere because, I can't take a hit from that. There's just too much power behind it. So, especially introducing new players, I might modify this a little bit. I've heard some interesting options on that, but we will see. All right. So then you go into, so this is basically walking through how to do character classes or how to build a character. They do have an alignment system, which I actually think is a little bit more interesting, a little bit more nuanced than what you find in Dungeons and Dragons. There are good alignments. There are no neutral alignments, but they replace that with selfish. So you have unprincipled and anarchist, and then you have evil alignments, aberrant, miscreant, and diabolic. So basically they kind of give you a scale, and then they also give you, like a diabolic character will rarely keep his word and has no honor, lie and cheat to anyone, most certainly attack and kill an unarmed foe, etc. So they lay out what kind of a character it's going to be based on your alignment. They then break down, so it is a level-based system, so you're going to need to earn experience points, but Simbita also does something kind of interesting with his experience. He wants you to look for different things to do. Like, yes, you can get points for killing or subduing a minor, major, or great menace, but then you can also get experience for coming up with a clever idea, even if it doesn't work, or playing in character, or putting your character in a self-sacrifice type situation. Probably not going to walk out of it, but he's going to try. Get experience that way. So he really does push to do something other than just beat up the monster. So I think that's kind of cool. Lots of stuff for rounding out your character, your birth order, weight, height, age, disposition, childhood environment growing up, family origin, How do you feel about the coalition? How do you feel about non-humans? Why are you an adventurer? Etc. 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 All right. So I'm going to put in a couple of final thoughts, and I'm going to have to stop here because it is 9 o'clock. I didn't realize it was 9 o'clock. I'm also getting stink eye from the wife. But if you haven't heard of Rifts or haven't heard of the Palladium system, check it out. I think they do some interesting stuff. I'm going to come back and I'll talk about a couple of other things another day, but it's got some interesting things to it that I don't think are as appreciated in 2022 as they should be. Not just the story building, not just the fact that it has been a continuously published game or the Palladium system has been continuously published since the 80s. There have been some revisions, some modifications based on the setting, but for the most part, the game is the same across the different settings. And I like Loa was saying earlier, I think Rifts deserves some more attention that it hasn't been getting. And so I'm going to start going over stuff, reading books. If there's interest, I might touch on the Savage Worlds version of Rifts, because I have some of that as well. But overall, it's interesting. So, needless to say, I do apologize for having to end it here. Obviously, there's lots of stuff that I haven't covered, lots of stuff that I would like to cover. But I think that kind of gives a good breakdown of what it is, kind of what to expect from characters. But we'll come back. We'll do another video, and we'll actually talk about how to use your skills, how to actually run a combat, and then we'll start getting into world books. This has been fun. Thank you for those of you who showed up. Look for this. If I do this again, look for it on Wednesdays. Might have to do it a little earlier in the day, but regardless, thank you so much for your time. Please don't forget to give the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and leave a comment if you'd like this, what you'd like to see moving forward, and we will go from there. So thanks for watching, everyone, and we will talk to you next time. Bye.